Watu wametoka kwa slum wameingia estate hawajaingia. Today we are giving you keys, not just to open a door, not just to open a house, but to open a home, to welcoming you into dignity, into a different life. Mwezi wa 8, mwezi wa 9 tutakuja kupatiana nyumba zingine 5,000. Mara 5 ya nyinyi mulio hapa leo. Tutarudi tena baadaye mwaka mpya tupatiane nyumba zingine 5,000.
All right, that's President William Ruto in Mukuru yesterday while handing over the keys to the homeowners, 1,080 units as communicated. Professor raised a couple of questions that I think I want to hear what the two chairpersons have to say, starting with you, Mheshimiwa Johana Ngeno. And please explain, by the way, how many floors are those blocks?
In Mukuru?
Yes.
11 floors. 11
floors?
Yes.
And you said they have water?
Correct.
Do you know the estimate of how much water is required there and the source?
Of course, you know, apart from the aspersions cast by my friend here, that this money is being eaten.
No. Don't misquote me.
That is exactly what you're saying. And it's on record. It has to be made clear.
Exactly. Money being eaten by who?
Today, we are celebrating the launch of homes. And yet somebody is claiming money is being eaten.
No, Mheshimiwa.
We should be able to...
On record. I did not say that. I did not say that.
I think what he said is that the government wants to get involved because there's desire to...
Exactly.
Yes, correct. That is what he meant.
So I don't know that.
But now we are... Yesterday, the president was handing over keys.
Yes.
To homeowners, new homeowners from the slums.
Yes.
Now tell me, if that money was eaten, then why were the homes being launched? Where was the money that completed these homes came from?
That's not the discussion, Mheshimiwa.
But anyway, that is besides the point.
It is
that is besides the point.
But I'm very interested in what you're saying.
You know, as a member of parliament, my job is oversight.
Right.
To ensure that the money collected from the people of this country are put into good use. When we appropriate this money during the budgetary allocations, we appropriate the money, we allocate the money, and later on we go around looking into the projects which had been destined or designated by this amount of money. It is our work. That is our work.
So, Mheshimiwa, you're saying...
We ensure...
You're saying your expectation is that...
I thought you completed your session. Prof. Even when you are lecturing in class, you allow yourself time to lecture, and then you allow students to respond. So you should be a very good lecturer.
Professor, I am. I'm a good one.
What I think we are missing is the fact that what exactly was the intention? Initially, these projects are meant to have been done by the private sector, just like what my friend here said, properly mentioned, the president of the architects. It should have been done by the private sector. And actually the private sector are doing 90%. But do we have enough homes? In fact, what we have are enough houses for rent. But these ones are not for rent. These houses are not meant for rent. These houses are meant to be owned by the residents, citizens of this country. What we have in the country at the moment are houses, and we have quite a number. But what I think the main agenda of this particular program was to make sure that people become homeowners, not house renters.
Yeah.
You see? And that is where the difference is.
How much did it cost to put up this Mukuru units?
1 unit, I think, and that is a question for the architects and the QSs. But what we normally ask as a committee is how much per square meter, and that is between 40.
Actually, Chairman, you know the project that you're saying 11 floors, 1,080 units.
Yes.
By the time there's a decision being made on how much every dweller should pay, there must be a figure.
Of course, there has to be a calculation, a figure.
So how much?
But our area of concern is how much was used to build 1 unit.
And how much is
square meter. One square meter is 40,000 per square meter. So when you do one unit, that depends now on the size of the room and etc. But for us, as the oversight, what we question is how much was used to build.
So you don't know the whole.
We know, of course.
Figure?
We know. It depends. When we want to calculate the whole project, we know the cost of the whole project.
That's fascinating. That
the cost of a unit
is the oversight.
The cost per unit.
Sorry, Chairman. As the oversight committee, you don't know how much money has gone into.
No, we know. Of course, we know.
How much?
There is a figure.
How much?
As in the whole of Mukuru, or the whole of one unit.
Okay, tell me what figure you know.
The figures I know is that, for example, if one bedroom, you start from a bed sitter, you go to one bedroom, you go to 3 bedroom, you go to whatever number of bedrooms. So it depends on the square meter. And one bedroom or one bedroom costs roughly around 600 to 700,000.
600.
I mean, a bed sitter.
And by the way, how do you access the 11th floor?
There are lifts.
They're working?
Yes.
Okay.
There's water, there are lifts, there are all sorts of... And by the way, this is not the first project in the affordable housing.
Yeah.
There is a Park Road. But you see the difference between this one and the Park Road and the Backstone in Mombasa and the Bondeni in Nakuru, the difference is that this one was designated for the slum dwellers. But the Park Road and the other units which had already been launched, people are already living there. These ones were for those who want to own homes, to buy homes. So a unit to do a unit cost up to, for example, if it's a bed sitter, between 700 to 800, 600 to 800. One bedroom cost up to around 1.5 million. 2 bedroom cost up to around 2 million. 3 bedroom cost up to around 2.7.
That's the cost of production or the sale?
The cost of production and the cost of sale. The cost of sale is slightly, there's a slight difference.
You're confusing me, Chairman, because you just told me that one bedroom costs between 600,000 and 700,000.
Correct.
Now you have turned that to be the bed sitter. And
that is a bed sitter. That is why the bed sitter is selling at around 800,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
800,000. Chairman Chanzo, you had a few things to respond to what Professor said here, because he raised questions about the involvement of government and why it should be the private sector getting into this program.
No, by the way, I'm very happy about the point that Professor is raising.
Yeah.
You see, this is not something that is being done now and is going to stop now. It's something, there is a starting point for everything. Eh? And in this particular case, I think we all remember that even the calling, if you read those who read the Professor and all of us, 1963, you know, it was the issue of the same thing about food. I mean, it was about poverty, literacy, diseases, and by extension, housing. Eh?
Yeah.
And you see, we have not been able to achieve this. We have had very many organizations coming. Even yesterday, and again when we were in Kwale, the other time when we were launching some project there with the president, I was very happy that organizations like Shelter Afrique, who had come here much earlier, you know, to look into issues of how we can address these issues. We have not been able to address them, and mainly it is because of politics. And I've told you something which is very important, that all these heads of state, they have had this in their manifestos.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go back to what happened after the election, this last election. The things that are still going on now, you know, you still feature them. About the kind of fighting there was. But, you know, once you lose an election,
yeah,
the idea with another person is wrong. You know, we cannot grow that way. And you see now, because of the harmony, that's why you saw that we were there, in that, at that place. Everybody talking almost the same language, because they're listening to their masters. But the main issue for me, as a professional, you know, I'm one of the senior fellows in the profession now today, in the built sector as a QS and much senior than that. I'm very happy about this, and in fact, what Professor is raising, and I'm also happy that my colleagues are here, and I like the chairman of housing. We've been with him struggling up and down. I think we need a forum, maybe, Professor, we need a forum like what I'm seeing engineers doing. You know, I've attended quite a number of their forums, and I've been telling these professionals, my colleagues here, when you got a meeting like that, don't just enclose yourselves. You go to a place like Serena, Mombasa, and then you enclose yourself. Let the media know. Because there is no point, like every day, on the newspaper here. You know, we are just getting either Huru, either Gachagua, or something. But what I learned about the newspaper myself, when I was in school, it was supposed to disseminate information and even to educate. But you see, we end up just discussing.
But Chairman, tell me, because there are real issues they are raising, including the President of Architects here, about the impact of a project to the community and whether there is the support system that you require, the social amenities that you're talking about. Do you see any social amenities in that project in Mukuru?
Yeah, in fact, I was coming to that because, you know, the other thing that I was going to talk about myself. I don't know whether you'll get it. You know, if you look at places, let's just take an example like places like Kilimani here, a place like Kileleshwa. And this came from yesterday when the governor was thanking the PS that they're working very well when it comes to plan approvals. But there's something that me as a professional, and I think my friends can talk about it, my colleagues here. You know, the places here, starting from there, and I think that's why this question is very relevant. And this is why I'm saying this forum is very useful, if we can take forward what is here. You see, even just from the common sense point of view, a place like Kileleshwa, during the Mzungu time, it was supposed to be an acre, or half an acre, accommodating about a family of about 5. But the city council, which was there by the planning, you know, there was a planning department in city council, which was very effective, as much as they used to talk about corruption. But they had to get these approvals. So the question which is being raised now, even yesterday, Nani, my brother, when we were there, you remember the kind of traffic jam we were encountering when we were coming out of that place?
Correct.
So we are putting up those. But I want to challenge. Devolution meant a lot. You know, the devolution, how we came up with the devolution, it's not a simple matter. It's only the poor have come up. They don't know what devolution meant. In fact, they don't even, like these things of CDF. We were saying that the person in Nairobi, like where you are, you cannot know what is happening in a place like where he comes from in the village. So we said we devolve, we take money there, and the people in charge will handle that. But they have taken that to be their own pocket money. The same thing with the devolution. So I'm addressing this issue. The county government of Nairobi should be working very closely to get this approval so that these services are provided. And that's why I'm saying that this forum is important, so that we can bring up this issue. Because you see, the moment the governor gets into the office, in fact, I've been surprised that when somebody is sitting in Nairobi here, he doesn't know devolution meant that he should also go to Ruto and see what is happening there.
And President, talk to us about...
So I'm saying finally that on that question that you raised, that we need seriously, because the number of units that he's mentioning, we are talking only about Mukuru, but you know there are about 200 sites all over the country. So there are quite a number of houses that we are going to achieve when they are through, and if they are managed properly. It's not only Mukuru, they are all over the country.
I hear of a figure of nearly 150,000 units that are under construction as we speak. But obviously still falls short of the promise for 1 year.
But what I agree with, seriously, is that we need to have a forum where we can discuss so that we can get these ideas. Because let me tell you, it is very
maybe you can use these as the first forum.
You know the trouble we have in this country, and if you compare with other countries, you know, I don't know much more whether you know that, you know, when we go for this benchmarking, the time is too short. You know, when you want to go to a place like, say, China, You know, it's about 3 days. You travel 2 days. You go there, you are given, maybe in the morning you are taken to a room like this one to show on the screen what they do. In the afternoon, you are taken to the factory or somewhere.
Yeah.
But I had a chance, 2023, June, July. I went to China for 3.5 weeks. And I saw what I saw in China. And I even said it. And this is the reason why somebody like Trump, you know, from his office, he doesn't know what's happening.
And have you been able to transfer that now to the...
That's the thing that I'm very happy about. This is the reason why I'm saying what we are doing is the right thing. It's only that we need to involve many more people.
No, you haven't answered my question. Yeah? You were in China for 3.5 weeks.
Yes.
Whatever you saw, have you managed to transfer to the National Housing Corporation?
This is what we are trying to do now. You know, you can't do it in a day. Because you see, you can see the kind of argument we are having now.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I'm very positive.
Okay.
About that.
Right. So...
that's the reason why we are doing...
Sorry.
That's the reason why we are doing foresight. You know, we have got successful projects in Homa Bay.
I'll get back to you. Chairman, I promise you.
Yeah.
Mr. President, tell me, when we are talking about these programs, where do you see as the best place for the private sector? Because he says there are challenges of procurement, but at the same time, there's a financing model. What do you see as the best model when it comes to involvement of the private sector, knowing too well there has to be recovery of the money that you put in?
Sam, I think first let me correct everyone here. I think I'm being boxed that I'm the president of architects. AAK is an umbrella body of 8 professions. So if I'm sitting here, I'm speaking for 8 different professions in the built environment. And that's what I'm going to speak to in terms of their engagement. And when I'm talking about engagement, I'm talking about meaningful engagement in this process. When we talk about the issues of procurements and the challenges that we're going through, that's why you have consultants. An average developer cannot be able to undertake even a small residential house, one, by themselves. They require a team of designers, a team of builders, and a lot of processes that come around in terms of procurement and the actual execution on site. Now, the evidence is very clear that this AHP program process is not a simple thing. It's not something about putting the money, because the money has been found, okay? I don't think it's a question of time. If we look at the program so far, it's 8 years old. And for me, I want us to transcend governments. Because if the program is to deliver something meaningful, building of cities is not something you can do in 5 years cycles. You need to look at, AHP needs to be assessed from when it started, and then we target, even have milestones, say in 2027, when it will be 10 years old, what have we achieved? Why have we not been able to achieve these numbers? And remember, the figures have been dropping since the time it was launched. The initial political pronouncement, if I'm not wrong, was 1 million units.
Correct.
And then later it came to 500,000. Then, of course, it came to 250. The other figure that are being said right now is around 200,000. Now, why is that happening? It is because the challenges which have been identified, everyone knows them. In fact, the only person who's making a lot of noise about this affordable housing being successful is politicians. And I wish they could actually sit back and keep quiet and wait for the work to be done, because I feel as if even the definition of what affordable housing, it's the MPs who have decided. They have said it must cost, as bedsitter must cost 600,000. If you ask a QS, that development of that unit, because it's on 11th floor, it's on 20th floor, it's not going to be the same as doing a single room on the ground. Correct. There is the issues we've just raised about, for example, the water. Having water, having water like a reservoir for this area, pumping it up. Having things like lifts. Remember, these are guys who are living in slums, okay? So the government is not going to stop at building the houses. They will have to manage those houses. They will have to ensure, as that person asked on Twitter, that these so-called segregated or underprivileged people have water that is better supply than even the formal development where people are paying. Okay, so how do you do that? by starting off with the point where we are saying that we're now counting the units. Okay, now you talked about the amenities. I think there's a fire station that is being built. It has not been completed. And I would like us to see, even look at something like the schools. I think there's a school in Mkura. I've been to that scheme once. I think it's too small. I didn't see a lot of public open spaces. When we're talking about infrastructure, we need to look at how do people from this area move to their work, because they also need to be enabled to continue living by getting a public transport to and fro workspaces. And of course the third space, which is always somewhere away from home and work, could be church, could be a place of recreation. So where I see the solution lies in terms of how do we develop this appropriately and sustainably. The first things first is that we must involve all built environment professionals. This is a golden opportunity for even emerging professions like landscape architects, maybe not emerging, but rather the ones which are unregulated, construction project managers, interior designers, there's environmental design consultants. We also have architects, engineers, and planners. I think the government must intentionally and meaningfully engage all of us to a point whereby we are overwhelmed with work. Now, here is the thing. How the whole program started, before we had a push, and I had Chair Chanzu talk about the issues of a forum. We started off by signing an MOU between IQSK, IEK, and AAK to create something we call a housing forum. The housing forum was supposed to be a thought leader in terms of the process, because that's really what we are trained for. We are trained to simulate how to develop these projects. And then the contractors and the building team will come in together with the financier, who in this case would be government, to be able to implement. Now, that forum has not taken off. Why? Because part of the funding that was supposed to go for housing was supposed to actually have this forum operationalized, in terms of being given some funding for research, being given some payments for even young professionals that we were going to include in this forum, and even other seasoned professionals, to develop the designs, simulate all the projects, all the possible site analysis, issues to do with geotechnical studies, so that when a consortia gets the project, with the meager amount that they've been allocated of 2.5% for a whole team, they can just go to site and just oversight. So there will be this database of typologies, houses, and every region would be special, because if you are going to different counties, you expect different local materials. To a point where the forum was even supposed to help in cottage industry, not just for building people, workers, but even people who are developing local materials like brick making or the local fabricators, and create a whole ecosystem of jobs for this so that this has an impact. Now, what has happened is that initially the first contracts were given to builders. And then most of those builders will then look for designers to help them. Later on, after a little bit push, we started having some tenders being put for consortia. Now, we are doing this thing all wrong, because we started off with money. We said we want money. Then after that, we say we want builders and fundis and everyone else. Then after that, we said, oh, we actually need designers. So we had a very difficult negotiation as professionals to get the amount of money we allocated. And that is where the rubber meets the road in terms of planning, in terms of visualization, in terms of protecting this program from any sudden things like material price changes. Now, that has not happened, and we're trying to get there, but you can see the figures speak for themselves. The reason we are not being able to develop this is because we went it the wrong way around. And I'm happy, sorry, just to finish, I'm happy that we have not done many of this. I know we should have done more. I'm happy we have not done many of this, because majority of what has been done now will have issues that if we start going deeper and start investigating things to do with the green design, things to do with the quality, indoor air quality, things to do with how people, access these spaces, then we'll start having very critical, comments to give about the units that have been developed. Some of them are good, but I think the majority will still need a lot of work in terms of the design as a holistic. Who's
supervising this at the moment?
Yes.
Who is supervising is the question.
There are consultants supervising it, but the disgruntled consultants, some of them are saying the amount of money they are given is small, and then they go to site, and then they find changes, because if you have a design that has been a typical design, if you go to different sites, different sites require different inputs. But there's a consortium of designers supervising the ones which are ongoing. Yes.
Okay. You know, Prof, the reason I'm asking this question, last year I was in Nyeri County and I was speaking to the governor of Nyeri, who was telling me about the affordable housing program. I think initially it was supposed to be about 3 floors, but the president visited and said that he wants more floors on top, and that was settled. But the project sort of stalled after that. How do we do it professionally so that we make decisions with everyone on board, including the political class, to express their interests, but at the same time leave it to the professionals who know what needs to happen when, and they can advise on even some of the issues that he's highlighting?
No, thank you. And yeah, just building up on the same, as you said, the bigger question whether this is the right or wrong thing, we passed. So basically, we're just looking at what government is doing and how it could be done better. You see, as George has highlighted there, the technical issues that one considers in when we're putting up these buildings, and there are development control requirements, there are normal urban requirements, there are issues around the social amenities, there are issues around services, there are issues around costs and so on. And just a high-level one to highlight this, we've seen places that are really just low-rise rural areas, and people are putting there 10-story buildings and affordable housing. Because why? Because we can. And, and the question is that the optimal way of doing development in those areas? The answer is just no. Let me highlight one specific issue to illustrate this particular point. We have the issue of services and the service costs. I always tell people that the reason why the poor tend to be on the ground is because the ground provides the services and the amenities. I'll highlight several. I'll highlight water, for example. You can imagine carrying water to a 15-story building or every day in your jerrycan, 20-liter jerrycan. Let's look at lifts. The guy is on the ground doesn't need a lift. The guy on the 12th floor, 18th floor, must have a lift that must function all the time. We are talking about, this has been even highlighted by Mheshimiwa here, that there is Wi-Fi, there is gas, there is electricity, there is water, there are lifts and so on. The higher you go, the more the services. What we are not being told is what are the actual costs of these services and who's paying for them. I know government wants to again highlight that when you are paying your 3,900 or whatever it is they're paying in Mukuru, it covers services. The services it actually covers is lifts. It doesn't pay for your water. It doesn't pay for your electricity. It doesn't. It doesn't pay for Wi-Fi. Mheshimiwa told us here, of course, that it doesn't even pay for gas. So basically what you're saying is that your actual cost of living in Mukuru should be carefully calculated. The truth of the matter is that it is between 7,000 to 10,000 per month. If you factor
inclusive of the monthly payments?
Yes, inclusive of monthly payment.
Is it a mortgage? Or what is that?
It's a mortgage.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a mortgage and mortgage insurance. And then is meant to cover for service. But that service, I am actually putting it because that service is basically the lift. You have to pay separately for electricity. You must pay separately for water that you use. That's not being paid for there. You must pay separately for gas. You must pay separately for Wi-Fi. We can even give them free with TV. It doesn't matter. But somebody will have to pay for it. So the issue that we have here is that the cost of living in these settlements are actually significantly higher than is being portrayed, even with the mortgage. Of course, we have issues about people living in slums and informal settlements being subjected to mortgages that run beyond 30 years. Even those of us in stable employment have issues with mortgages just running into 20 years. You can imagine somebody with unstable income being told that, fine, you're going to pay a mortgage that is beyond 30 years. Then, of course, you have to pay for these services and so on. So we need to simulate, again, as George was saying, we need to simulate how these environments would actually, work, would actually function. And that is why some of us went to the university and got PhDs. We know one or two things about these sort of things.
Right.
And let me just give a basic example. Not even subsidized housing. Yeah. Not even. We are talking about free housing in South Africa. People were selling free housing that they were given by government in South Africa for as little as 5,000 rands. That's 50,000 Kenya shillings. Why were they doing it? They were doing it because the new houses that were given for free actually radically transformed their lives and in a negative way, yeah. and the way they allocated their income. A lot of those people now had to pay rates which they were not paying before. They had to pay services, these ones you're talking about, water, electricity, and all those things, which they were not paying before. Many of them now, because they had a location and another title, were able to access credit, which they were not doing responsibly, and the Shylocks. So suddenly you find that this person who was comfortable in the slums, actually, comfortable, the housing was not that bad, but they had money to spare for food, they had money for school fees and so on. Suddenly they were broke and they were hiding. And a lot of them were willing to actually give those houses for free because they couldn't just figure out what the nightmare was. And what did we do? We said, look, you even need to educate the homeowners, the new homeowners, because these people have never owned anything in their lives before. And there are consequences of owning, yes. There are costs of owning. They're all that sort of thing actually had to be done. In the Kenyan situation, what you're actually saying is that, if you're targeting this person who was living in slums and informal settlements, paying, 1,000 shillings, for their one house, and then, doing all these things, and then we're saying, oh, it's okay, because, I mean, we're helping the guy own this particular house, and they'll be paying like double what they were paying before, but now they own, which is a good argument. But on the other hand, have we simulated this person's overall expenditure because of this new burden? Is a burden that we've actually imposed on them. That burden is almost 10 times what this person was spending before. And we're destroying these people. We are actually destroying these people. And we need to look at instruments that can be used to protect them. One of it is subsidy. This is our taxes. Why can't it be used to subsidize these people? So that services, for example, can be provided as part of this package. Okay. We do have instruments again, Mheshimiwa. We do have instruments. We do have lessons and insights. I don't need to go to China to benchmark. I've stayed there for many years under my studies. I know how these things work in the US. I know how they work in Latin America. Because that is actually my calling. That is what why government took me to school. The professionals are and that is what we are saying in many words. Yeah. That, let the politicians listen to the professionals. The professionals do actually have ideas that can be used. They're working with them. Yeah. But as President of AK George has said there, it is not enough. And for most of the times, it is actually to rubber stamp, decisions that have been made a priori by the political class that are actually all-knowing. The politicians in Kenya are just next to God. They know everything.
By the way,
and we know nothing.
By the way,
okay.
By the way, protect them. Let me say something.
Protect us.
It's okay. He's doing a good thing. Let me tell you one thing, Konvina.
Yeah.
I'm telling you again.
Yes.
I don't know if it is the 100th time. This is a very good forum for me, and I think for my colleagues here.
Yes.
The only thing that Professor is doing, all these things he's talking about, we know them.
Yes.
We don't know. It's only that, when you are working, like here, like I told you,
yes,
you are giving us maybe between 6:40 to 8 o'clock. You cannot cover all these topics. The same thing. So let me tell you.
You can use the little time we have.
Yeah. let me tell you. Let me tell you that we must start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I've told my brother here, I've told them,
yeah.
We have had forums of professionals, and they invite the minister, we invite the peers, and so on, And I want from this to understand what Professor is raising.
Yeah.
The issue is raising here. The thing of us inviting somebody, then he comes and then we heap praise on him, that because he has come to our function in Mombasa. You see, these are the kind of things that should be, I like you because of this. This should form so that he's able to respond. Because, you can talk and talk and talk. I've told somebody,
yeah,
You can come from a house like someone like me. I've got a small kid, and the kid is telling me, Daddy, you attacked your what wrong? Like you are saying you are a kid. you end up in town.
Yes.
And people start asking, this mheshimiwa hata mahali alilala. Mtu alilala na yeye hawezi kumonyesha. So this is the situation we are in. Me, I'm very happy about this discussion because, you know, let me tell you, when politicians like the presidential candidates, when they are preparing these manifestos, you know, they can't have a very professional.
Correct.
True. You know, you can't have, if you have them, then you can't, boom.
It's very costly.
You can't have a doctor, you can't have an engineer, an architect. You bring it now.
But actually it happened. I remember the different charters with different professions that Deputy President William Ruto moved across the country doing, including county charters and putting it on paper. And that's how he actually generated his manifesto, but never mind.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the starting point is good now.
Okay.
Let
me hear from the chairman of the National Assembly. Yes, I know.
Before you can ask your questions.
Yes.
One thing that we must make it clear, and I'm shocked even the chairman is not responding to that. Our chairman here was a former member of parliament.
Yep. Yes, he was. Yep.
And he's a QS.
Yes, he was a professional.
In my committee, I have two QSs who sit in that committee. Yes. I have engineers.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't understand this concept where people think politicians never went to school. We go to school. No. We went to school. Even me,
Kenyans are the most educated.
You said we are well read. I have PhD, I don't know what. We also have so many PhDs in that parliament. People who come to that parliament have variety of professions. Lawyers, engineers, architects,
focus on
all sorts.
Let me not derail you.
That one I agree. If you wanted to say that.
I was provoking you.
So that when we are about science, like for example, when you are electing committees or selecting members to various committees,
yes.
If it is Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, half of them are lawyers.
Yeah.
If it is Roads Committee, most of the members are engineers. If it is housing, for example, most of the members there are QSs and professions, yeah. So whenever we are making decisions, people who are outside should not imagine that we are just making decisions based on
normal. Can I correct something?
Let me also give me time, like you've given the professor and the president.
I want you to help us because we saw the images yesterday, which I want us to look at. Some of the house that the president was at, and speaking to the lady who now is a homeowner. If you look at the interior, including the furniture has already been installed.
Yeah.
Is that how all the the units look like?
There is something I wanted to explain, especially on that context.
Yes.
Number one, on the issue of rent that you are paying.
No. First tell me,
I'm coming
all the
there.
units, do they look like that one?
Of course, not all of them, but it depends. It's optional. There is an additional amount you have to pay of 200 shillings. If you want your house to be furnished, you add on top of what you are paying 200 shillings.
200 shillings per month?
Per month.
For how long?
Depending on the amount of furniture that you put in your house. So you do the calculation, the maths. If it is furniture that costs around 10,000 or 15,000 or 20,000, you just do the math until you complete. And coming back to that point of how much is somebody paying.
So that's like a show house of sorts.
But of course, there are so many houses already which are furnished, depending on the owners.
How many are furnished?
Well, I may not have the right figure, but it depends on the people.
How do you decide what to allocate to who?
Like I told you, the people identify the people who have been identified to come and live in those homes. How do you decide what? Somebody wants to live in a one-bedroom, somebody wants to live in two-bedroom, somebody wants to live in a bed-sitter. Yeah.
I imagine you have thousands of people that want to. So how do you decide who gets what?
It is you to make a decision. You want a bed-sitter? You get a bed-sitter. You want a one-bedroom?
Who?
You get it.
Who is that?
You, the homeowner.
Okay, not me, but who qualifies? Can someone who just arrived in Nairobi
I told you the Mukuru was slightly different from the backstone in Mombasa, the back road in Parklands.
Yeah.
and Bondeni, Nakuru, you know, those ones were for those who want to own homes, civil servants.
So who qualifies for this?
But for this one, Mukuru were those people who were living in the slums. The Mukuru, kwa Njenga, the Mukuru, kwa Ruben. These are the slum dwellers who were living in slums.
Do you know how many there were?
Of course, we cannot get the correct number. Depending, maybe of course, the ministry have the correct
And therefore
number.
the question, if you don't know the correct number, how do you decide? You have just 1,080 units. How do you decide what goes to who? And how do you decide this is a legitimate, previously slum dweller?
And I told you this previously, that before the construction of these homes, there were people who were living there, slum dwellers. They were vetted, identified, and profiled, and then moved elsewhere. So
it is only them that are going to qualify for this allocation?
The slum, the Mukuru, the new Mukuru homes are for the slum dwellers who are living in the slums.
What is the cost of, you give a few figures, but I'm also seeing figures saying that for someone owning a two-bedroom house there, they'll pay 6,800 shillings per month for 30 years. Is that correct?
No, one bedroom is around 3,000. I think 3,000. And what my
a bed sitter I'm saying is 3,900. A bed sitter. Is that correct?
No, that is not a bed sitter.
No, bed sitter, yeah, like that. You know, that's the thing, eh?
So, sorry, what is the figure for a bed sitter?
3,900 per month.
For 30 years?
It is not necessarily 30 years. If you can afford it earlier.
No. The starting point.
Yes.
For 30 years.
Yeah. You know, let me reply to that, and I was coming to that, by the way.
Yeah.
3,900, 2,700 goes for the rent to own for whatever number of years you want. If it is 30 years, if you want to reduce to 10 years,
you can do 10 years.
You can say I'm paying 10,000.
Yeah.
Depending on your pocket.
Yeah.
If you want to reduce to 5 years, you can say I want to pay 15,000. So that I can reduce the number of years. So the years are optional. But the point which my professor wanted to bring in.
Yeah.
Even where you are living, even if you are living in Karen, you've bought land, you build your own house. The house and the land cannot come with water and gas. You have to pay for gas. And that is why the government is providing the supply of gas, the supply of Wi-Fi, the supply of water. But for the consumption of water and Wi-Fi and all that, you have to pay, which you pay everywhere.
Yeah.
But the point is, there is what we call service charge of 1,200. Which is incorporated in that 3,900, so that the rent you are paying to own that house is 2,700. 1,200 goes for the service charge, which of course will cater for the lifts, cater for the garbage collection, cater all those particular needs that people have. But then, if you want to use gas, you pay. Yeah. If you want to use Wi-Fi, and by the way, the Wi-Fi costs around 10 shillings per day. If you want to use it for 10 days, you can pay whatever amount. You want to use it for a whole month, you want to use it for a whole year, you pay whatever amount. So this one is just like tokens which you pay.
Gas, you can bring in your Meko, your
of course,
charcoal.
It depends on the conditionalities in that particular estate.
Yeah.
If it allows for Meko, if it allows for firewood, it depends on the conditionalities in that estate. Yeah. But the issues I wanted to bring up, which of course we are trying to run away from, is that why is it that some people feel pain when slum dwellers get homes like you have?
By the way,
why are people feeling so pain? Well, and you know, when you question, when you even go to the extent of saying, these are people who are poor, these are people who may not, who have never accessed before, and they may not, you know, what is wrong with somebody who has been living in a slum, occupying a house that is properly maintained?
Has it nothing wrong?
The sentiments I got from...
That's what you want.
But
you want decent
it's a point of information.
Yes.
So that, you know, it's raising a very important point.
Yeah.
There's something which a professor you must take into account. Whether we are talking about, you know, this levy 1.5%, it's only 1 shilling. In 100 shillings, it's only 1 shilling and 50 cents. There's something that all of us here, we are not going to benefit from if we don't get one of these houses. You know, the land belongs to all of us. And the land is zero-rated. If you take the same houses which are here and take them to Kilimani or Kileleshwa or Levington, you'll be paying about 10 million or 15 million because of the land.
Yeah.
The land is zero-rated. And this is something that we'll never benefit from You live here, you are living in Buruburu, paying rent like some of us when we left university and we started living in rented houses. You reach the age of 60, unapeana kifungu, unarudi Vihiga, unarudi wherever you go. But here the land is zero rated, so everybody is having benefit from that land, which belongs to all of us. If you don't get the house, you don't get that benefit.
Sam, just a quick one.
I
think, Chairman. Yes, I think we need to be serious here. The reason why some of us are disgruntled is not because somebody has gotten a house. No. The reason why some of us are disgruntled is because we're asking a basic question. How many people need and deserve houses in Mukuru? And how many have gotten the house? That's what you're saying. That, look, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people in Mukuru, and the ones we've reached is so small. If you're looking at people living in inadequate housing in Kenya, we are talking about tens of millions of people. And we are saying it is actually wrong if you have the resources to come and find 10, 20 million people with inadequate housing and then provide housing for 1,000 of them. That is really wrong. And what we are saying, again, without any fear of contradiction, is that this can be done differently so that majority of these people can benefit. If you did a school in Mukuru, a lot more people would benefit. If you provided water in Mukuru, a lot more people would benefit. We are not saying you stop what you're doing. What you're saying is that there's a way of doing, of using our money, the taxpayers' money, to be able to solve the problem realistically. It is like going to a school of 3,000 people and then you teach one student. The one student passes and you're busy celebrating while 2,099 have not passed. For me, the issue is ideologically. For me, it makes more sense to go to the football pitch with a microphone and teach the 3,000 rather than focus on this one. And that's the point we're trying to make, that what can government do to ensure that, yes, the ones they want to celebrate, the 2 or 3 they give houses, they celebrate. But at the same time, the problem is being solved realistically. How can we reach majority of Kenyans with our tax money? We want this tax money to reach as many people as possible. And that is what Mheshimiwa here is avoiding altogether.
Gituku, on that note, the government is doing 13,000 units in Mukuru.
Yes.
This one will be occupied by more than 13,000 families. Families of people ranging from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. The government is intending to do, it is also doing another project in Shauri Moyo of around 20,000. The government is also doing another project in Starehe of around 15,000 units. The government is doing another project in Mavoko. The government is doing another project in, you know, when you count the number of projects which are done in the country, across the country, either in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, everywhere, the target is those people who do not have homes. So it is not a question of we concentrated these particular projects in Nairobi alone. It is not a question of, even Kibra here, there's so many projects which are going on. And it's targeting over 100,000 individuals. So this is something which you could not say we could, maybe they could have done in 1 year or 2 years. It is a project that is ongoing. But the target is majorly, and you see, I also wanted to remove this notion that maybe we're only targeting the slum dwellers. We're also targeting the employed, those people who want to own homes, those people who are paying these particular levies. Another target is the institutional homes. These are hostels which are built in the institutions, right from the universities.
How are you targeting the
You
employed?
are employed. You want to own a home. There are homes which are being sold. The ones which are done in Starehe and Shauri Moyo and those other areas. If you want to own a home, you just rent to pay. I mean, rent to own.
What is the rate?
The rate is the same. There's no difference. Between the Mukuru slum dwellers who are paying 3,900, you will be paying the same 3,900.
Is that so?
Yeah. If it is a 2-bedroom, the rate is the same.
So
the rate in Mukuru,
are you convinced it's fair?
Of course, the rate is the same.
You are convinced it's fair that I pay the same rate as the person in the slums?
But of course, you know, it is like the rate in if you want to buy a house in Kileleshwa, you go with the rates in Kileleshwa. If you, the normal house in Kileleshwa,
the rate of interest.
The rate of
rate of interest.
Interest, which interest?
Because when you get a mortgage, there's a rate that applies, isn't it?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So when you're buying that house in, you said Starehe, what is the rate applying?
The same amount you are paying in Mukuru. If one bed sitter is around 3,900, it will be the same, 3,900.
And you think it's okay?
For a bed sitter.
So
maybe it may not be okay, but you see, for somebody who wants for somebody who has been paying a mortgage for a home or a one-bed sitter, one bedroom at around 5 million or 10 million in Kileleshwa, you get a one bedroom in Shaurimoyo that goes for 2 million. Don't you think that
is there a difference in rating for a social housing program and an affordable housing program?
But
it's almost the same.
Weshimua also gets some facility in Parliament. How much rate is he paying?
Something I wanted. How much rate are you also paying?
Not rate.
Chairman, I wanted to explain.
And you think the poor in Kenya should actually pay higher rates than you?
I wanted to explain something on institutional houses.
Before you do that, tell me. The government says that 110 billion shillings of housing levy has been collected so far since the year 2023. Where has that money gone?
It has gone to building the constructions that are going on in the country. There has been advertised projects.
So how much has gone to what?
I won't correctly know the figure. Of course, you know, our job as an oversight is to ensure that the money that has been appropriated goes for development of
appropriated in what manner?
I mean, when we are doing the budgets, you appropriate money for.
Does the affordable housing program come under the budget?
Of course it does.
How? So how much is allocated for the 25-26 that
25-26 around 70 billion.
70 billion.
Yeah.
So again, out of the 110 billion shillings, we have had reports of money being invested in treasury bonds. How much is in bonds? How much is constructing houses?
The ones which have gone to the T-bonds, approximately around 40 billion.
40 billion?
Yeah.
Why? Why is it in bonds?
The reason is if you advertise for projects to be done, of course, the projects are not going to be completed within that particular period. It can take around 1 year, can take around 6 years, 6 months to pay. So while that money has been allocated to particular projects, it cannot just lie idle waiting to be paid.
Yeah.
It can be invested, and that one is within the law.
Is that a good thing, really?
It is, because the interest that is gotten from currently, the interest that is being gotten from investing on those T-bonds is also being utilized. Like currently, when we called for to address this particular matter, we found that the interest they have gotten so far is around 4 billion, and it is being invested on the right projects. But that is not even the point. The point I'm making here is that apart from the homes that we are talking about, like for the slum dwellers, the State Department is also doing institutional houses, which is hostels in the universities and the TVETs and you know, those ones actually come in handy because most of the universities lack funds to do hostels. Most of the TVETs and KMTCs lack funds to do the hostels. And therefore, this affordable housing fund also helps in building the hostels in various universities and that brings down the prices of rents to the students which are living there. Apart from that, also they do institutional houses like the police. They build homes for the police, the prison warders and all that. So it is a variety of activities that happen in the country. And what I would want to say is that there are so many projects which are going on in the country. So many projects. It is only that maybe they have not been completed, but there's so many. Every city, every town has projects going on.
Let me hear from the president, because we've been quiet for some time. On what you think should be the way forward.
I'm actually bubbling under because I'm feeling like this discussion could have been way shorter and more crispier if we focused on the rate of delivery. And how do you answer the question of mass housing. Because what we're trying to achieve here is mass housing, which is dignified for all Kenyans. And I think we don't disagree that we need dignified housing. We need to grow as a society. Unfortunately, the question is here that we are not moving at the pace that we should be moving.
Yeah.
And at the rate at which we are going, at 1% delivery rate, we will not achieve what we are trying to, whatever. It doesn't matter how big the dream is. And I think one of the things we did not start off, I said earlier, on the right footing. We are here, and I would box ourselves in the professional body and the financial, the government.
Yeah.
And we are speaking to our clients, the Kenyans, and we are arguing about how to deliver this. But scientifically, there's only one method to deliver the project. And if the financiers and the actors are in agreement, then we would be, actually, I think it should be Kenyans asking us questions. Yeah. So I wanted to bring in the issue of how the briefs were developed for the needs. Okay, we know there are projects happening in the whole country. Mm-hmm. But there is something called, I think every county has a housing committee. And I think they're supposed to come up with briefs, come up with plans of what they need, and then escalate it to the national government, which will then allocate funds for this project. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the main issue here is that when we were talking about involvement of professionals, I don't think I said that professionals come and give advice to MPs. We've done that. I think we've come, we have summoned us, we've given you our ideas, yeah. We've gone to the State Department, we've given our ideas. Mm-hmm. Whether you do it or not, that's a different story. And I'm talking about engagement on every project.
Meaningful engagement.
Every project requires a program. I would even ask maybe the National Housing Corporation, for example, yep. From those statistics from NBS, I think last year they delivered 0 units, for example. Then the State Department delivered 50% less units Correct. Than the previous year. Yeah. Yeah. Now, and this is the thing which we need to be careful about. Yeah, that I think the actors, and that is even the oversight. I think maybe the MPs have not done Kenyans a very good job at oversight. Right. Because they should actually be putting the State Departments and the National Housing Corporations right. to task and say, yeah. You guys say you're going to deliver this unit. What is the problem? Correct. And then we give the solution and say, because even in normal cases, something called force majeure in projects. You can say it rained heavily. We couldn't go to site for 10 months. Right. Or the money was stolen, so it was not available at the time. But we are not speaking to that. We are now discussing the merits of affordable housing. Surely, we should be... Let me round my point.
Just a small correction.
Delivered.
Just a small correction.
It's 8:05.
Just a small correction.
Sorry, let me hear from Kenyans what they have said.
No, just a small correction.
Just before small correction. Citizen daybreak on what you're saying about the housing program that has been going on for a couple of years. Engineer Nazario is saying now it's time to audit the total amount used in delivering those housing units. Kenyans have a right to know how the government spent the money. Otherwise, congratulations to Ruto on the successful completion of part 1. We are still waiting for the promised 5 million jobs. Sir Nixon Dugire, please ask the panelists who will be responsible for managing the Mukuru homes going forward in the event that a beneficiary is unable to continue making payments similar to those who defaulted on the Hustler Fund loans. What measures will be taken? Baraka, you're saying, I earn 15,000 shillings. I pay 300 shillings monthly for house levy, and I still need to raise 700,000 to afford a bedsitter plus monthly payments. Sounds more like a tax on hope than housing. Why not just call it a housing tax? Affordability, mwachane tu nayo. All right. Frank Orinde, the housing question in Kenya isn't just about shelter, it's about trust. While the program is marketed as a solution for the common mwananchi, there remains unanswered questions around cost, land deals, transparency, and forceful deductions. Tirop Lindsay, you're saying a vertical slum is still a slum if residents are unemployed, children are out of school, healthcare is inaccessible, and streets are unsafe. The aesthetics may change, but the struggles persist. Only now they are hidden behind concrete walls. Okay, Mwalimu, I wonder whether Kenya Kwanza's obsession with building houses reflects any sense of fiscal prudence. What's the rationale behind overtaxing poor Kenyans to fund housing projects that even they cannot afford? A few years down the line, we shall deeply regret this decision. I've been looking at the budget books for 2025-2026. I don't see so much allocation to affordable housing. I think the only figure I'm finding out of the program-based budget book is about 10 million or so. But the housing department has been allocated 116 billion shillings. 95.8 billion shillings is to come from appropriations in aid. I don't know whether that's from the housing levy or what it is, but we continue to ask these questions. I have to say here that we invited the housing department at the ministry level. They were unavailable to have this conversation, but we continue to raise the questions. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time for us. No, you can't. It's 8 minutes after 8. We will have another forum, I can assure you, Mr. Chairman, to talk about this. My name is Sam Gituku. See you again soon.